My July electric bill in Texas ran $438. That's not a typo. That's cooling an 80s brick house through a triple-digit month. And when the compressor died in August, the first quote to replace it came in at $6,000 and the second was higher. My HOA approved the condenser without a word, but when I asked about a window unit in the back bedroom, the reply was capital letters again, aesthetics clause. So I paid $6,000 for the same machine the neighbors had. It burned the same kilowatts, and I started wondering whether the house itself could do the cooling, the way sellers have done it for centuries. What I found, buried in a university archive, is the part nobody sells. Here's the setup you're paying for twice. Your air conditioner runs on electricity from a plant 100 miles away. And in a typical gas-fired plant, according to federal numbers, roughly 2/3 of the fuel leaves as waste heat before it ever becomes power. Then a few percent more evaporates on the wires. In coverage I've read from the Energy Information Administration. Now the bucket. The utility pours a full bucket of fuel into the plant. What arrives at your house is a smaller bucket, and your bill charges you for the full one that was poured in. Then your compressor takes that expensive electricity and fights an afternoon sun that's already 100 degrees outside. A buried air tunnel skips the whole ladder. It pulls attic air down through pipe in the cool earth, and the ground does the heat exchange for free. No flame, no high-pressure loop, no bucket between the sun and your living room. That's the part that made me dig. So what does this actually cost? In industry estimates I've seen, the materials for a serious earth tube, drain pipe, a small blower, a filter box, screening, come to a few $100s. Even with excavation and a licensed electrician for the fan circuit, you're in the low thousands. Now compare that with what the market sells for the same physics. Ground source loops, buried coils. According to installer pricing I've seen, those run north of $20,000 once they're categorized as renewable infrastructure. Same earth, same 55-degree ground, different paperwork. A product that costs a few thousand to install and sells for 20 plus carries a margin nobody walks away from. And a buried pipe threatens that margin exactly as much as it threatens the summer bill. That's not paranoia, that's economics. And it's the first reason this thing disappeared. If this kind of digging is your kind of digging, subscribe. One of these file dives lands every week. The buried air tunnel is old, properly old. According to coverage I've read, the Windcatcher towers of Persia sat above buried air channels thousands of years ago, pulling desert wind down through cool stone and into living rooms with no moving parts at all. In France, the Canadian well, reportedly from an engineer's experiment in the 1800s, ran fresh air through buried ducts to temper it before it reached the house. And the idea never fully died. In coverage, I've read, a rural cooperative in Hokkaido ran a ground air trial around 2009, and similar tubes show up in off-grid builds from New Mexico to Germany in independent notes shared by people with nothing to sell. So the physics is documented and the history is deep, and in the late 70s, somebody proved it on a public building and then, on the last page, quietly walked away. Here's what I found on that last page. The municipal study I've been reading all week, a late 70s energy trial on a county building sitting in a university archive, documents 2 summers of double-digit cooling savings from a buried air tunnel with nothing but a small fan and routine filter changes. And then the conclusion does something strange. It recommends ending the program, citing staffing for maintenance and monitoring. Not performance, not safety, staffing. The cooling was free, the engineering was one time, and the ongoing cost was a person checking filters twice a year. There's no electricity to meter, no refrigerant to service, no subscription, and in an economy that prices everything by the kilowatt, a machine that earns nobody money is a machine that quietly gets archived. Read the air handling patents and you'll see the same shape again and again. The idea works and the commercial trail goes cold. That's why it disappeared. It wasn't broken. It was unprofitable to promote. Now the comment section I owe you. Objection 1. A buried pipe can't hold a house at 68 through a Phoenix heat wave. Honest, this is a pre-cooler, not a replacement for air conditioning. It shines the moment AC becomes optional. Objection 2. Humidity. Fair. In humid climates, you size the pipe, slope it, and drain the condensate like any system that moves warm air toward cool surfaces. And objection 3, the big one. It still needs a fan, and the fan runs on electricity. True, a small blower draws a few dozen watts, nothing like the 2 or 3 kilowatts a compressor drags. But the number that settles it is cost per summer. A compressor is a consumable part with a service life of maybe 15 hot years, and it's thirsty the whole time. A buried pipe has no moving parts, nothing under pressure, nothing to recharge. Its only cost is the occasional cleaning. Sure, a heat pump moves more heat per watt on paper, but the pipe doesn't age. Over 20 summers, that single number wins. And a seller has been proving the physics for 4,000 years. So why did it disappear, and why does it stay disappeared? Not because it's secret. The plans are older than the patent office. Not because it's illegal. It's a pipe in the ground. Because of a quiet rule this whole economy runs on. No industry spends marketing dollars on a device no one can own, lease, or meter. A compressor earns somebody money for decades. Kilowatt hours, service calls, parts, the next bigger unit. A buried air tunnel earns nobody money, ever. Earth cooling is free, and free is worse than cheap. It's unmeterable. Excavation and permitting can make it fiddly, sure. But the reason you don't see it on billboards is simpler. Nobody gets paid to tell you about it. The disappearance wasn't engineering. It was the invoice. Call 811 and have every utility marked before the blade touches the ground. Route the intake away from driveways, exhaust vents, and anything that smells of fuel. Slope every buried foot of pipe so condensate runs to a drain instead of pooling. Vent the warm return air outside, never into the living space. Seal and insulate the inlet and filter the air before it drops underground. Register the excavation with your county building department, and read your HOAs, CC&Rs before you break sod. Verify your soil, sandy and dry, beats heavy clay, and your county extension office can tell you what you've got. 3 red lines straight. 1, a buried intake can pull soil gases into the house, including radon in some counties. Seal the intake properly, keep the duct under slight positive pressure, and keep a radon test kit on hand. Your county extension office sells them for pocket change. 2, condensation is a mold factory if it can't drain. The duct must slope to daylight or a dry well, and a removal cleanout is non-negotiable because the county building department can order the duct opened and remediated. 3, cutting a trench near foundations or driveways is structural. One misplaced run can fail in the first freeze, and unpermitted excavation puts you on the wrong side of your county's codes and your HOA's enforcement. So call 811 first, pull the permit if it's asked for, and if you ever wire the blower into house circuits, have a licensed electrician do it. That's the point where the inspector actually shows up. You're moved tomorrow before coffee. Call your county's 811 line. It takes 4 minutes and tells you where every pipe and cable already is. Then call the county building department and ask one question. Does a passive ground air intake need a permit here? And when you have a quiet hour, search your library's newspaper archive for the words Windcatcher or Earth Tube. The old articles are the best engineering documentation nobody files. Because if this one surprised you, the next one will break something you thought was solid.